Okay, guys, we might get started. Today, we're going to go through our transitions webinar. This webinar is originally designed for students that are going through year 8 in high school, but it also expands and it's applicable to a broad range of audiences, particularly those who may be considering transitioning into university or going through other various transitions in their life. We're going to go through a range of different topics today as we cover this broad topic, and I hope you enjoy today's presentation. To get us started, my name is Travis Harriman and I'm an Access Project Officer here at Flinders University. And I have the pleasure of working with young people in the broader community in trying to encourage positive education pathways, and it's a great job. Today's presentation is roughly going to be 25 minutes in length. I do ask that you please turn your camera and microphone off if you're tuning in at home, just so it doesn't disrupt the presentation. If you do have any questions, I encourage you to type them up in the chat bar and I will get to them afterwards. And because your questions may be the same questions that other people have, and it's just easier so it doesn't disrupt. But if there's anything really burning, I'll try and address it as we go. All of the information covered in this presentation is relevant for domestic applicants, although most of the content isn't really relative to applications in this one. If you have any issues seeing or hearing the presentation, don't be afraid to visit the WebEx link up there on the screen for troubleshooting. Yeah, we'll get started. All right, now today we're going to go through the following topics as we explore and unpack the notion of transitions in our lives, the importance of them, and how we can prepare for when we find ourselves going through them. Now we'll start by using a simile to draw out some of the imagery often associated with transitions and the life experiences we may have before exploring what they are and why they are so significant in our lives. We'll use high school as an example we can all reflect upon, honing in on this transition as a common example before considering what we may expect from a transition to university, as for some may be a logical next step. We'll then look at work and how that may differ again. So unpacking some of the terminology and different elements that we might want to know about when we jump into the workforce. And lastly, we'll finish by going through some top tips for preparing and planning ahead for the transitions we're likely to face moving forward. Alrighty, let's get started. Sounds good? Awesome. Okay, now if I said your life was like a river, what might I mean? Now, this simile compares life to an image of a river, something that we know really well. It instantly jumps to mind, particularly when we look at these pictures as well. And it allows us to draw a lot of comparisons, breaking down the different elements of this idea of life and the transitions that we might go through. So firstly, like a river, life has plenty of twists and turns. Now, these may be things like injuries, moving interstate or overseas, losing a job, failing a test or an assignment, having a breakup, or moving school. Now, often these twists and turns are things that are outside of our control because life throws us curveballs and we aren't always sure what's around the next corner. As you can see in the river, you may be traveling down a river and then you come to a bend and you can't see the direction that's going and what's around the next corner. Life's exactly the same. So we have to adapt to the unexpected. Next, we have this idea that a fork in a river represents the choices that we make and the directions that we take in our lives. Sometimes these choices may define our journey or they may just see us head in a new direction for some time before returning back to the main flow of the river. So we could go totally off on a totally different track and that previous path could be closed, or it could return and rejoin into the main flow. Now, examples here include getting married, definitely changes your life. Having kids, you can't put them back. Choosing what you do after school is a big one for any young people we may have in the audience. Deciding what to study for those who may be a little bit further down their path. Taking opportunities and even changing jobs are huge examples of forks or big changes in our lives where we're making a choice that affects the pathway we're on. Next, we have this idea of rapids. Now, in our simile, rapids represent times of danger or times of challenge. Now, when life is moving really fast and you have less time to think about what you're going to do, you might find yourself under a lot of pressure. Now, going through adolescence is a great example of this when you are exposed to new things and new people, and there's a lot of maybe dangerous decisions, and you're more at risk, and you take more risks as well. You might also have this idea of going through Year 12, so the pressure of Year 12 and trying to navigate all of your subjects in this new unknown sort of way of learning with the extra pressure of what you might do afterwards as well. Also starting starting any new transition could be examples of when things can be really rapid. On the flip side, though, we do have slow moving rivers, which could represent times of calm, or when we take time, we need to make big decisions. Now, you might like to think of taking a gap year here. So for young people in our audience, that's taking a year off after school to figure out who you are and what you might want to do with yourself. Some of our members of the audience who maybe have been through quite a few more transitions and a bit more experienced may have taken a gap year themselves at various points in their life, maybe not necessarily right after school. You could also consider retirement here, and as another great example of when life winds down and you can focus on the things you really enjoy. Holidays, relaxing, spending time with your family, that sort of thing. And lastly, we have here that life is like a river, and it will be fraught with our own personal challenges and different circumstances that you'll need to navigate. Now, that's what we're going to focus on today as we unpack some of the key transitions so we can start to get prepared for what might be coming for each of us and what we've been through as well. Okay, so we can define a transition as a process or a period of change from one state or condition to another. Now, they are major periods of change, so they're not tiny, they're significant periods of change that we go through in our lives, and they're often associated with the different phases of our lives, such as going and starting school, primary school, high school, maybe university, going through adolescence, so through puberty and our body changing and how we fit in the world and where our place is, and sort of how much autonomy we have and independence for ourselves. Work, university, I said before, having a family, and retirement is another huge transition. So these periods see us engage in the world in different ways than we've ever experienced before. Some of these transitions are inevitable and some of them are irreversible. So thinking about aging, we haven't found the fountain of youth yet, so we will inevitably go through our age-related transitions as we grow older, whether we like it or not. If you have kids, that's a great example of an irreversible transition. You can't put them back. You're a parent now, and that's a new role that you have to take on and accommodate into your life. I've been through that myself. I have just over a 14-month-old, so definitely experiencing this one myself right now. So you want to make sure you're ready for these transitions as much as you possibly can be. The next one here we have is that work, schooling, and further study are great examples of how transitions that we make can see us learn and grow. Now, these new conditions that we face through the transitions and really open our eyes and expose us to other possibilities, which allows us to see ourselves in a new light as we evolve in our capacity to engage in the world, as we're growing, as we're aging, as we're sort of broadening our horizons. Transitions in general do often involve the unknown, so they are scary. They can see us move to a new state of normal, which is difficult to prepare for in a lot of cases, as we don't know what to expect, particularly if we don't seek any advice or do some research or lean on those who can support us. And yeah, as I said, they are often scary, these transitions. They're new. They revolve around change, which a lot of us don't like change, which is a normal thing in human psychology. You're not likely to go through them alone, though, as I said before. So maybe we're spending some time to speak with others and get their perspective and gain some support for the transitions that you're going to go through. All right, now we're going to go through some examples. Our first one here being high school. Now, this is a common transition that we've all been through, regardless of whether you're a Year 8 student in our audience or an adult learner. It's a transition to high school. So we're going to break it down with some of the key differences between high school and primary school to get a closer look at what that transition looks like. So firstly, for most of us, starting high school would have seen us move to a much bigger school with a lot more students. Now, this means navigating a huge new space with a lot more unknowns. More personalities, behaviours and opinions can be great, but in most cases this would have been quite daunting for most of us. I know I found that really daunting myself when I started high school. Second point here is that you'll find yourself exposed to a whole new range of subjects in high school. Some good examples might be home ec or tech or drama, more practical based, depending on your school and the experience of the teachers that you have there at your school. Now, the teachers in high school are more specialised in what they teach rather than teaching a broad array of different subject areas as they do in primary school. So this specialised knowledge is really important to expand your learning and allows us to partake in more practical classes that maybe you couldn't beforehand because of the safety limitations and because you're a bit more responsible as you're growing and you're aging, and you're more capable of safely engaging in some of these more practical tasks. Our third one here is that teachers expect more in high school with greater workloads and more homework. Now, this is important when you consider how important education is to our development. So more work and harder work is key to us continuing to grow rather than plateauing and just sort of sitting at a happy level where we're not expanding our knowledge any further. So the expectations increase here as well as we're going through adolescence, and we're more capable of managing ourselves and our own time through our behaviour and our learning. So teachers will pick up on that and the expectations do naturally increase, but we're older and we're a bit more responsible, you'd hope, as you go into high school. Reflecting back on your transition to high school, it may be a bit different for all of us, but this is sort of the expectation that's there. We do find that in high school there is a more personalised timetable, so you have the opportunity to start picking and choosing some of the subjects you'd like to take based on your interests, what you enjoy and the direction you may like to head in. So there's generally a lot more on offer there as well in high school with broader offerings of subjects as well. So you've got a huge range of subjects. There's more teachers with more expertise there. Some of you, like myself, may have found when you started high school that if you went to a high school that not a lot of your friends did, I was the only person from my school to go to my high school, that I felt very disconnected and I lost a lot of connection there. Now this, it can be common and it can lead to difficulty making friends, but on the flip side of that, there's a whole huge range of opportunities to meet new people and have new experiences with others that you haven't met before, and there's a lot of growth that comes with that, and that happens in a lot of other transitions in life as well, like university and work. So this isn't uncommon to high school. And lastly, we have this idea of being the little fish in the big pond again. Now, in high school, you spent 7 years there. You become, 8 if you include reception, so you become the big dog. You're very confident in your surroundings. But when you start high school, you start back at the bottom again. So it is a bit daunting. You have to work your way up and get find your feet, so to speak, in the new situation that you're in. So that's high school. That's a transition we've all been through, we can all relate to. And a lot of the emotions that come up there can be common in a whole range of other transitions. Now I'm going to start going through some other transitions that we're likely to experience or you may want to consider to sort of see how they connect and see where the similarities lie. Starting with university. Now, after school, university can be a logical next step for some who may want to expand their knowledge that little bit further. Now, for others, it may be something that you consider down the line as you seek a qualification to progress in your job or the career path or what you might want to do with yourself. It may be part of making a change or sidestepping in your career. Now, regardless of the situation, university is often an unknown, so I'm going to break down some of the key elements of what it really looks like. That way, if you ever do decide to consider the transition to university, you'll have some ideas of what to expect. Now, the first one that a lot of people do bring up when it comes to uni is this idea of autonomy. So unlike school, university relies primarily on your own autonomy. So you are the master of your own domain. You're in charge of yourself. If you don't go to classes, you don't hand up work, that's on you. How much effort you put up is all up to you, and that's your own certain personal choice and into how much you want to put into your studies. Unlike school, your lecturers and tutors won't be breathing down your neck and reminding you to get work in and to get things done. So it is very different there. But on the flip side, with autonomy comes a lot of freedom and also a personal accountability. So if you're willing to put the work in and sort of manage yourself and your time really well, you'll get a whole lot out of the experience. So it is very different in the autonomy at university. The next thing here, though, is that it's incredibly flexible. So unlike school, university operates on a whole different timetable. You have a lot more choice in when you have your classes and how you take them and the different topics that you might choose. You could schedule all afternoon classes in if you're somebody who likes to sleep in. I like to get in early and get it out of the way, but you can really tailor it to your own personal circumstances and how you work best when it comes to university. You can study online as well, which may be a good choice for some people if you live further away or you've got a very packed life that you want to fit university into. Maybe if you're an adult student in our audience, or if you come from a regional hub as well. So yeah, you can study part-time as well, which is a great option. Again, if you have other commitments, maybe if you have a family or if you're working as well. And that allows you to complete your degree over a longer period of time, but you're actually expected to be here or spend less time on your studies because you're doing it part-time and committing to other things as well. So that flexibility is amazing. So it gives you more options to fit studying around other aspects of your life, which is one of the great benefits of university, as opposed to school, which is a lot more rigid, as it needs to be. University is very personalised. Now, again, you can personalise your study plan at uni, not only when you study, but the topics that you take. Unlike school, there's no common compulsory subjects that everybody has to take. If you're studying psychology, for example, you won't have to do any maths. There's no core maths. You may do a statistics subject, which is about the stats and data related to the field of psychology. But that's a lot more palatable because it's related to your industry and it's not core maths. You don't have to do this big block of maths. It's just some mathematic components and numeracy that's related to your study area. So it's a lot more palatable. You can choose from hundreds of degrees at university, and that's where it's very personalised as well, based on what you want to do, what you're most interested in. You can also personalise your whole experience as well, in that there's clubs, there's all sorts of different clubs, there's special interest clubs, there's sports clubs, footy, hockey, tennis, you name it. There's political clubs for different political alignments, there's language clubs, there's special interest groups. I know there's a tabletop gaming group, which I wish was around when I studied because I love to play D&D. Other people may be interested. There's a Harry Potter Quidditch club where you can play Quidditch. Not quite sure how it works, but it seems like they have a lot of fun. So uni is very personalised, and there's a great opportunity that you can really find your tribe and find your fit by meeting other people with similar interests, which is really, really exciting and one of the great benefits of uni. And lastly, we have that it's expansive. So here at Flinders, we have over 250 different course combinations, and they're offered at campuses all across the state. I'm here at this one, Bedford Park, right now, which is our main campus near Marion Shopping Centre. We have a lot of degrees taught here. We have a short footbridge that links over to on-campus accommodation at Flinders, which is something particularly interesting for those who maybe would move to come to study. And down on the other side of Flinders living there, we do have a campus called Sturt where health is taught. I did a lot of my PE studies down there, on the ovals down there, if you've ever seen them. We do have a campus at Tonsley where Mitsubishi Motors used to be, where a lot of IT and engineering is studied. And we do have a small campus in the city at Vic Square, as well as some regional centres where some of their health courses and different sort of degrees are taught. So the options are endless when it comes to university. That's just us here at Flinders. There's other universities as well. So just stepping your foot through the door at university, being so expansive, can just open so many more doors. So whilst uni may be a very daunting transition for those who may consider it down the line, it is very exciting, and hopefully I've showcased that a little bit there. The next transition that I want to talk about is this idea of transitioning to work. Now, work is very different from schooling and university. There's a lot of comparisons we can draw between school and uni, but work itself is very different. And for most of us, this transition will happen at some point during or after our studies. Hopefully, you might get a first job when you're in high school if you're a younger member of the audience. If you're somebody who's a bit more experienced, you've probably had many jobs, and this transition will be very familiar to you as well. So work can look different across industries, qualifications and levels of experience. Now, if we have a look at the images up here on the screen, the role of a firefighter is not the same as being a cashier, a surgeon, or a designer potentially working from home. So regardless of the specifics though, there are some commonalities across work, and I'm going to sort of explore them a little bit just to unpack this potential next transition of work so that we can get some ideas of what to expect. Now, when I think of work, one of the first things that comes to mind is this new set of rules, routines, systems, and expectations. Now, this may include what is and isn't acceptable on the job, and that may be very different from other places or other sort of scenarios that you found yourself in, like school or university. The specific ways that you're expected to go about things, so there may be very distinct methods or approaches to doing tasks, and the steps that you need to follow and how you record what you've done. So work has its own very specific sets of rules, routines, systems, and expectations. They differ across all different jobs or career paths, but they all do have some. So that's something you may need to start getting your head around as you explore work. The next one is that depending on your job, you're likely to need to wear a uniform of some sorts, and you're going to have to maintain that as well. Make sure it's clean and tidy, and you're presentable when you attend work for whatever sort of work that you're doing. Now, this also, you'll also need to learn how to read a roster. So this idea of rostering when you're supposed to be at work, how long you're supposed to be at work for, what days you're expected to be there. Likely to want to know when you're going to get paid and how you get paid. So work, one of the best things of work is you get paid for it, unlike study, unless you're getting some New Start or youth allowance. So you're going to want to know how pay works. But unlike school, when it comes to work, your holidays aren't set in stone. So you may like to know about your leave. Now, when it comes to leave, time off is very important, and if you're part-time or full-time, you'll accrue what's called leave, and that gives you time that you can take off for yourself to have a bit of a break. If you're a casual, you'll want to know that roster really well, so you know the days that you're working and the days that you have off. But it's also important when it comes to leave that if you will have leave in your job, that you learn how to apply for it so that you can book that in advance and that sort of thing as well. Next, we have this idea of layouts, facilities, and equipment. Now, like most transitions, work sees you familiarise yourself with a new place. So this means that you're going to have to learn the layout, where the facilities are and what's available, and where the equipment is that you're going to need to complete your job successfully, and make sure that you upkeep all of your tasks. Now, familiarising yourself with these things early and asking lots of questions is really crucial to being successful at a job. So I'd encourage you to do so if and when you make this transition to work, no matter what it is. But most importantly, you might want to know where the break room is and the toilets are, so that when you have lunch, and if you're like me, you'd like to know if there's a toaster machine, if there's a microwave so you can heat up some leftovers and have a nice warm meal, but also so that you know where the facilities are when you need them. So this idea of layout, facilities, and equipment is also really important. We then have the idea of hierarchy and leadership. Now, this relates to the chain of command. Now, this is very different from school and university, because in work there are some very set structures, and you do need to sort of adhere to them. In most cases, you'll have a boss, and you'll want to know who that is and how you might best interact with them. There may be other supervisors as well, or sub-leaders, and you may be able to go to them for support or for different things like putting in your leave or getting a day off if you can't work on a certain day, and those sorts of things, or maybe if you have a complaint about a customer or a colleague. So learning that structure is really important and adhering to it, and also knowing where you fit and how you should operate within that structure. And lastly, here we have some other terms that you may need to get familiar with, such as colleagues, customers, and clients. Each of these is very different, and how you treat them depends on the work that you do. Colleagues are those that you work with, so hopefully you can become quite chummy with them and maybe have some friends as long as you're getting the work done. Customers are those that you're providing some level of service to, so you want to make sure that you're pleasant and that you're providing the best service that you can in the role of your job or your work. And lastly, there is clients. Now, they may be people that you may be working for specifically, or you're trying to encourage them to come on to your business. So you want to impress them and keep them on your side. So 3 different sets of people there that you'd have to navigate in different ways. So as you can see, work is really broad, and all of this is slightly different across industries, but here's some commonalities that you'll find in a transition to work. And whilst you can develop skills and qualifications that prepare you for work, a lot of the learning that takes place on the job. So I'd like to encourage, particularly the young people who maybe are watching this, that it's very important to get experience nice and early, because as you make that first transition into work, the next one's a lot easier because you know a bit more what to expect. A lot of this terminology becomes familiar, and you've got a point of reference of what you've experienced before that you can take with you into the next experience of work. And it's going to change. You'll have a transition again, but it'll be a lot easier once you've got one transition to work under your belt. And getting a job early helps with getting a job every time afterwards. So the sooner you can start working, the easier that you're likely to find it to continue working and staying in the workforce. All right, now today we've talked about life being a journey. We've exposed the river simile, and we've used that to draw out some analogies there. We've looked at what transitions are and how they might affect us. We've looked at high school as a common transition that we all experience as a point of reference, before then opening up to university and work and seeing how those transitions may be logical next steps and a bit different for those of you who are watching. So now I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, my tips for planning ahead for the transitions that you're still going to go through as you manage them. Now, the first one here is that you need to remember that you're not alone. Many have gone before you and many will follow suit. Now, this could be your parents, your grandparents, it could be friends, brothers, sisters, mentors. So I encourage you to share your experiences, compare those experiences to those of others, and ask them for their advice, as it's highly likely that they'll have plenty to tell you, and they can give you some really good insight into how they manage their transitions, and that might help you with getting through the transitions that you're going through. Next, we have this idea that it's really a good choice to talk about and accept your feelings. So change is hard for everybody. I've recently adapted to delivering webinars like this, and it's something I've never done before, and I found it really daunting. So luckily, I was able to lean on my colleagues, my friends, and we support each other, and it helps us get through that transition. So similarly to my transition into delivering webinars, if you start university, if you start work, talk to people, and really don't be afraid of your feelings. They're valid, and in many cases it can help to talk through them, and it can help you even normalize the things that you're going through with people that you trust. Transitions are exciting though, so it's important to not forget that whilst they're daunting, there is a lot of excitement and growth that will happen there. My third point here is to focus on what you can control. Now, we'll all spend a lot of time worrying, a lot of wasted energy on what we can't control. I know I do it, and I imagine most of you have done it at some point yourselves. Now, this is particularly true when we venture into new situations, when we go through transitions like work, like school, like university. So be kind to yourself and focus on what you can control. This gives you perspective and helps you reduce your anxiety by just focusing on what you can do something about, and the rest is going to happen naturally around you. And that's where you talk and you get some support from other people. Fourth one here is get ready nice and early. Now, in many cases, we can't plan ahead for our transitions that we're going to go through. They may come out of left field, but in a lot of cases we can. So school, university, work, we build ourselves up in preparation for that transition. And what you want to do is get nice and ready. So you might like to make some lists. You might set some goals, research into what you can expect so that you can be better prepared, and it reduces any feelings of being caught off guard, and you sort of come in as a bit of an expert. You've got a bit of knowledge of what to expect, and it's going to ease that transition there. And my last top tip here is my fifth one. Adapting takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't eat an elephant in one bite. Adapting to a transition doesn't happen overnight. By giving yourself the time to grow and adapt to a new transition, a new situation, you become a lot more comfortable a lot faster. And we've all been through various transitions in our lives, and in general, people will understand. They've likely to have gone through the transitions themselves, and if you open up and you talk to them and give yourself some time, you'll find that things might be a lot easier. So give yourself a break. All right. Thank you for listening to the content today. That ends our transitions webinar. I would like to draw your attention to our webinar schedule. So if you are watching this either recorded or if you are watching it currently, Some of the webinars that are coming up for the rest of this week are having a Plan B webinar, which was originally designed for Year 9 students, but it encompasses everybody who may be dealing with setbacks and looking at how they might expand their options and explore where they may go in the future. It's a great presentation we'll do tomorrow. We have a study area engineering will be addressed on Thursday, and we'll have that should be Thursday the 7th of May, apologies. That one will be with one of our students in engineering, and we'll expose that study area and tell you a lot about it. And then on Friday, we've got a session that covers a lot of our courses and gives some general information about Flinders, what we offer and the different pathways available. Do jump on the webinar schedule though, because there is something for everybody, no matter what situation you're in. If you're in high school, if you're between study, if you're considering university, if maybe you're considering going back to study from a job or picking something up, please check out the schedule because there's something there for everybody. And lastly, I'd just like to draw your attention there that we do have a range of different ways that you can contact us in follow-up of today's webinar. We do have a phone number which you can call, and if you take that option 1 there, you'll get through to our prospective students team, and myself and one of my colleagues will answer that call and do our best to help you with whatever you may need help with. You can book a phone appointment. We are going to be running a chat service as well that you'll be able to access, or you might email us depending on what mode works best for you. If you have watched today's webinar, I encourage you to fill out our survey there at the bottom. That link there will take you to a survey which can give us a feedback on this presentation, how it was and what you thought of it, so that we can improve it for the next time that it's delivered, but also expand what we're delivering if there's a need for what you may want to know about Flinders and courses and pathways and what we offer here at Flinders University. Great. Thank you very much for joining me today, guys, in our transition webinar. I hope it was useful. I hope it was engaging. Please do check out our webinar schedule for everything else that we have to offer, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.